Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with network journalist and co-founder of ICONMAKER Sheryl Plouffe. As the visionary co-founder of ICONMAKER, she and her partners have propelled coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs to achieve 6- and 7-figure successes through high-margin programs and strategic podcasting. With over $3 million in client sales since 2023, her leadership is transformative. Before entering the business world, she spent 2 decades as a Canadian television anchor and executive at the Weather Network. It's a great story. Enjoy.
Absolutely. No, it's great to meet you too. And I would like to begin our conversation with 4 years ago, we were trying to figure out this pandemic. How long is it going to last? The ramifications, and ultimately, how did you survive that time period? And how did it change the way that you do work now?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sure. I can speak to that. And how long are your interviews typically?
Oh, well, right now, I mean, we're running pretty late, probably about 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. Sounds good.
So that was my first question, so I'll start over. I come from jazz radio, so I just usually dive right in and go. So I'll just start at the top, and we'll just dive in from there.
Let me get my earbuds in. And then
well, you just let me know when you're ready, because that was my first question. But I want to do like an intro, so just let me know when you're ready, and we could do it.
Okay. Let me just get it set up. So let's see. Audio. Okay. Can you hear me well here?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. I've got you in my earbuds now. So
Excellent.
So let me just sit myself down here, and then we will talk. So let me just put my phone. I'll just put my phone right there. Perfect.
Okay, excellent. Sheryl, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
I'm so excited to talk with you. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we begin and get into your life and work, I want to know, first and foremost, 4 years ago, this pandemic was quite a thing. No one really knew how long it was going to last and how it was going to affect us. But ultimately, how did you make it through that time period, and how did it change the way that you do things now?
Well, it's interesting because 3 years prior to the pandemic is really when I started my business. In 2017, I started in video marketing because I have a long background as a TV broadcaster here in Canada, working on national television, being a news director for several years, teaching college, etc. So for me, it was starting in video marketing. But what was interesting was seeing over the course of those 3 years leading up to the pandemic that, video marketing was, and social media and digital was changing. And I wanted to get into podcasting. I thought, what a natural fit for a broadcaster to have a podcast. But I tried that a couple of times, doing it the traditional way of trying to build an audience. And I am doing air quotes right now. It's a long process for a lot of people to build up enough of an audience to monetize it in the traditional means, or the traditional way, i.e. podcast, i.e. advertisers, sponsors. So I did it a couple of times and then and it was during the pandemic, which brings me to the answer to your question, was during the pandemic as I saw social audio taking off, as we saw Clubhouse taking off, as we saw Zoom taking off, and millions of people were using these platforms to not only survive personally, but professionally as well. I thought, what if I do podcasting again differently this time? What if I use podcasting as a means of building high trust relationships with others? Would that make a difference? And that was really my experience, Joe, right? Was during the pandemic and doing that and realizing, that's the key. We use podcasting to meet people and to talk to people and to have real conversations. And that's kind of when the light bulbs went off.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do now in 2024. If I put you in front of a bunch of third grade students at career day, and one of the kids asks you, what do you do for a living? How would you answer them?
I would say I help business owners build wealth, 6- and 7-figure businesses. They wouldn't know what that is, but I would say wealth, right? I help entrepreneurs build their businesses is how I would explain it. So if I'm speaking to someone who knows what a 6- and 7-figure business is, that is essentially what we do. We help people through podcasting to leverage podcasting as a means of doing that, of building wealth for themselves and to build a sustainable business that they can grow to whatever level that they want.
So what did you want to be when you were in the third grade? Was your dream always to get into broadcasting?
I think in the third grade, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I was going to be a lawyer. I also loved art as a child, so I think I wanted to do something in the arts. But, you know, I did not really think that I wanted to be a broadcaster. That didn't happen until I was 18. 18 years old is when I was tapped on the shoulder when I was volunteering at a cable TV station. The host of the show didn't show up one day, and they tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you girl, want to come over here and do this show?" And that's when I fell in love with it. I ended up hosting that show for a couple of years and fell in love with broadcasting and telling stories and on camera work and television. And that's really where my career ended up going. And I got to the national stage by the time I was 30.
So clearly the seeds were planted early on. Talk to me about where you were born and raised and how these seeds of being on camera and being a journalist, how did all this kind of evolve into that career for you?
I am from a mining town in northern Ontario, Canada, which is a bilingual city, right? And most people speak both languages, English and French. I am bilingual myself. So I come from a French-Canadian family. Middle class. My parents broke up when I was young. My parents split for 10 years and then ended up getting back together. So there was some drama there, certainly some drama, some upheaval, and it was over the course of my teen years that I really developed this desire to want something more for my life. And I don't know where that came from, call it spirit, call it whatever you wish, but I felt like there was some kind of internal knowing or calling inside of me to do something bigger with my life. And that happened to be initially through modeling and pageantry and television. And then eventually, as I got into my 40s, realized it was something much bigger than that. It was actually about helping put other people up on a pedestal. So I come from a humble background, and, you know, a broken family to some degree. Thankfully, my parents did get back together and now have been together for another, 30 plus years. But there's been some drama in my past, and I wanted to find a way to carve out my own path and you know, have a different journey.
So who's been a hero for you? Who's been a consistent inspiration in your life?
Well, you know, I've been a fan of Prince, you know, Prince, the rock star Prince, who died in 2016, he would have died. And I have been a fan of his since I was 12. And I think that through his music, through his artistry, he's probably shaped me more than I even realized in terms of my beliefs. And, you know, I believe in equality and inclusivity and, you know, and I love his music, obviously. So he's had a really big impact on my life artistically, I would say.
So what was one of the best stories you ever covered or one of the best interviews you ever had as a journalist?
Well, one of the ones that really stood out for me, I don't know if it was the best, but it was the most impactful on me was because I worked at the Weather Network. We did cover earth sciences and meteorology and weather and that sort of thing. I was actually one of the first people on the scene at a tornado event that happened in Midwestern Ontario. It was an F3 at that time. It would have been classified as F3, and it was very damaging to the town. I happened to be on vacation only an hour away from it. So I left my vacation to go and cover it, and I was one of the first people on the ground to see the devastation. One person did die at that event. And so I was there now, I think, for the next 48 to 72 hours covering it live for the Weather Network on location. And videographers came up from Toronto to come and cover it with me. But that was one of the most impactful ones. Most of my experience was in studio and also in the office as a news manager. We had a variety of different, you know, interesting things that we did. Every year we would do emergency preparedness week. So we would cover and have a variety of our content that we would create around emergency preparedness, helping people realize the importance of having an emergency preparedness plan in the event of, you know, dangerous weather. And that was always a highlight for me over the years.
So let's say you could conduct a dream interview with anybody on the planet right now. Who would you love to talk to or be around for a little bit?
I really like Gary Vaynerchuk. I like his energy. I like his approach. I think he is somebody who does care about humanity and people, and he's a successful guy and came from humble beginnings himself and worked hard, and I think I see some similarity. So I would love to spend an hour with him and ask him questions.
So in your life as a journalist and in your work now with entrepreneurs, you're obviously highly driven, very goal-oriented. What is it that gets you up every day and has consistently motivated you to do good work and to also evolve as a human being?
Well, I think it's the difference that I see us making in the lives of people who come from a place as an entrepreneur where it can be really confusing. It can be overwhelming. It can be daunting. A lot of people who come to us are people who've invested in many, many other coaching programs in the past and have seen little results from it. I myself am someone who has invested in coaching programs that I saw little from myself. So one of the things that we believe in is risk reversal. So our programs are all built around the idea that, yes, you have a little bit of skin in the game to work with us, but your investment in our program is linked to your actual results. So you don't pay us unless you are getting those results. And that's very different than what we see in the coaching industry. We feel like we're also wanting to turn the coaching industry a little bit on its head. And I think that wakes me up in the morning as well. The idea that we're making a difference and really building a movement around this idea that shouldn't we be focused on getting results in these programs, ours included. And we teach that to our clients, and our clients have gone out now and have sold, I think we're sitting now at over 3.5 million that they have done in their own businesses with this idea of risk reversal and results-oriented programs, guaranteed results in their own programs. And we're not even a year old yet here at ICONMAKER, so we're pretty proud of that.
So do you think your history as a journalist kind of gave you that philosophy on really delivering results and putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak?
Yes, 100%. I feel like my experience as a broadcaster is the journey that I needed to go through to get to where I am today. I see so many parallels between broadcasting and marketing, broadcasting and communication in this digital age that we're in. Absolutely, definitely see a correlation between that. I mean, the truth is, when you're a journalist, you have to be producing results, or you don't exist as an entity, you don't exist as a media organization for very long. So I think that there's a big parallel there.
So in this new career path of helping entrepreneurs, what's been one of your most memorable clients, one that's made you grow, that really made you realize this is the avenue for you to be living right now? It's like saying, which of your children is your favorite? I love them all, but there is one that I'll cite. His name is Shiraz Babu, and he is a reality interventionist. So he's the guy who you go to, and he can help you understand that the reality that you think you're in right now is not real, right? Like that you can move past the reality or the circumstances of your own existence in this moment and go to a place where you're meant to go, which is growth and expansion and bigger and be able to impact more people. So I think we've had an impact on him. He's been able to really build his business up, but he's also in turn been so generous to help us too at ICONMAKER, and I mean that from the perspective of all three of us as business owners. He's helped all three of us privately and say, hey, listen, I'd be happy to help you out and get your mind clear as to what you're capable of doing and getting rid of some of those blocks that might be there, whether you realize it or not. And all three of us independently have had calls with him, and he's been so generous, and we've all said, I feel different now having talked to him, because he does have a gift and a skill. So he's one person that really stands out to me. So what's the best advice that you've ever gotten?
My husband also spent nearly 40 years in broadcasting himself. And one of the things that he has instilled in me ever since we met, we've been together for over 25 years now, make it good, then make it great. Meaning, and it's really around this idea of make something viable and then work toward perfection later. And I think that's something that has carried through what we do as an organization as well. We talk about ready, aim, fire, rather than ready, fire, aim. And so that has been a theme that has, I think, permeated my whole adult life practically, and ever since I met him anyway. So I think that's one of the things, you have an idea, you have a concept, get out there, make it good, see if it's viable, work it, and see then if it's worth pursuing and perfecting. Sitting there and trying to make something perfect without actually having data to drive whether or not it's worth putting out there, or that people want it, or that people need it, I think is not the path to follow. So for me, it's about make it good, then make it great. And I also had that philosophy. I took that philosophy with me even when I was a news manager. When you have 11 different feeds across the country to create content for 24/7, at some point, that's going to be a really good philosophy. Make it good, then make it great.
So being in that high-fueled journalism world of adrenaline, do you ever miss it? Do you ever think, wow, I'd love to be back in that? Or are you kind of redirecting that adrenal flow? How does that work with you? Because you have to get weaned on that feeling. Kind of like a performer, whether it's a musician or whatnot, when you hit the stage, you're gonna get a different level of adrenaline than an average person going into work. What's your thought on that right now?
I really enjoyed it. I think at the time I loved it, but I'm a different person now. I've grown, I've matured. I'm not sure that I'm, really itching to have that kind of adrenaline in my life anymore. If anything, I think I have a different kind of adrenaline in my life today. It's a little bit more on my own pace. It's, I make my own schedule. I work for myself, obviously, so it's a very different environment. It's almost like comparing apples to oranges, but every so often I will think back and go, wow, that was a really good era. That was a really fun time. It was fun while it lasted, and I learned a lot, but, life evolves. You change as a person. And so I'm not a person who looks back. I'm very much a person who looks forward.
So of all of these accomplishments that you've had over your career and all of the evolution that you've gone through, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
I'm ultimately proud of what we've done as a family here to build the life that we have, in particular around our son. Randy and I have a now 16-year-old, and he is an athlete, and we often talk about this. We say we're so proud of having been able to give him a great childhood. We had a summer home, and he spent a lot of his summers at the cottage, and we've been able to travel all over the place for his sports, both hockey and baseball, at a competitive level in both sports, and spending time in hotel rooms together across Ontario and Michigan and other states like this. This week we're going to Indianapolis again. We've traveled a lot for baseball and hockey, won tournaments, have had highs and lows, and what a wonderful experience to have been able to give him that. So I think it's really this idea of maybe my husband and I feel like we're almost, he's our proudest accomplishment. And what we've done as a family to be able to travel together has been just a blessing.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you impart on that young version of you, and would that version of you listen?
Advice I would give my 18-year-old self, and would I have listened? Gosh, that's a good question. I think I would probably just say, trust yourself. And I did. I really did trust myself. I've always been a person who's leaned into things that I'm afraid of. And the more afraid I am, the more I would think to myself, it probably means I ought to do it. And in fact, almost everything I've done has been through fear to some degree. There's always been a level of fear there. So I think if I had to, advise my 18-year-old self, I'd say it's okay. It's going to be okay. It all works out. Just trust yourself, lean into the fear, do it anyway. You're going to, at the very least, learn something from it, if not accomplish something. And so that I don't know that I would change anything, but I would just instill in her and say, it's going to be okay. You trust yourself, trust your instincts, and go for it.
So at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you, especially with your public persona and with everything you're doing now to help entrepreneurs, family, friends, clients, the public at large. But ultimately, you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm somebody. I think I'm a leader. I think I'm a leader. I think I've been that way since I was a teenager. I think people look at me as a leader. Now, having said that, I don't think that I'm someone who has it all figured out. I never claim to be the person who knows all the answers, but I am a very inquisitive person. And when I love learning. I'm a lifelong learner. So I'm the person who will look things up in the dictionary. I'm the person who is going to go online and read articles and find out more about things. So, I think that's really who I am. I think I'm a leader, and I think people look to me for direction, and I think they appreciate my advice.
So I got to know, if you could go back in time and cover a story in the history of, modern media, what story would you have loved to have covered? Where would you love to have been and be a reporter at?
Well, I mean, I think as a broadcaster, I probably would be really interested in some, especially and this is from a personal perspective. My husband worked at Bell Media for a long, long time, and there have been quite a few negative media stories that have come out about that media organization. So I would have loved to have covered that, actually. Now, that wasn't in the genre that I was involved in as a broadcaster professionally, because I was in weather and meteorology. But if I was in news, news, I would probably would have loved to have covered that story. There's so much about that story to uncover, that I think would have been interesting and had a personal connection to us and our family.
So if anyone out there wants to hire you, reach out, learn more about what you're doing, any of the good business about your world, where can they go?
ICONMakerLive.com is a great place to go. A great place to connect with me is LinkedIn or Facebook. And we hold regular workshops. We have a variety of different events. We have resources that we provide people. We have an ultimate directory of podcasters that we provide people who are interested to be a guest on shows, or people who might be interested to monetize a podcast as a guest or as a host. But I think ICONMakerLive.com is a great place to start, or connect with me on LinkedIn and just shoot me a message.
Isn't this modern world kind of cool that people are using podcasting because it's a more personal touch to market? I mean, I know that you can put, ads on bus stops and things like that, but as a journalist, does it make you happy to see this kind of new media revolution happening?
Yes, I do. I think broadcasting had its moment, right? And it still has its place for some organizations. But for me, as someone who's really involved with entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, and there needs to be that personal connection. We ought not to lose that, because that's ultimately what benefits both parties, to get to know each other. I say this a lot. I say we need to be remembering that we need to talk to more people. And that's why, to your point, I love podcasting. This modality allows for us to have conversation, which is the foundation of building relationships. And relationships are what's going to help us impact each other through our businesses. So, I don't think there is another modality quite like podcasting, in the sense that it's built on conversation, built on relationships, built on getting to know each other, and built on talking and having dialogue.
So well said. And I think about the fact that, so many media outlets cut back and want to streamline and do everything in a way that's more convenient for the end user, but that is exactly it. You lose that personal touch, which is why people wanted to connect with the media to begin with. So it is quite a good direction to go in. So, but I again, Sheryl, thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Keep doing the wonderful work out there. I appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you so much. This has been great, and I just wanted to commend you on the great questions. It's so refreshing to be interviewed and have some really thoughtful questions coming my way. So I appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.